man sits in a rented room in Rome. He is not writing a book. He is not building a system of theology. He is writing letters, personal letters to real people, people who are confused, divided, afraid, and searching for direction. These letters, written on papyrus, carried across dangerous roads and sea routes, would become the most influential collection of personal correspondence in history. 13 letters, written over roughly 15 years. But there is something most people miss. They are not arranged in the order they were written. And when you read them in order, you don't just read theology, you watch a life unfold. Paul's earliest surviving letter begins without warmth. No thanksgiving. Only urgency, because something has gone wrong. After risking his life to bring the message of Christ to Galatia, Paul hears that new teachers have arrived, teaching that faith alone is not enough. They are adding requirements, law, ritual, identity, and Paul responds with intensity rarely seen in his writings. Even if an angel from heaven preaches a different message, let him be accursed. At the center of Galatians is a single idea. You are not made right with God by what you do, but by trusting what Christ has done. To prove it, Paul goes back before the law, to Abraham. Abraham was counted righteous, not by ritual, but by belief. The law, Paul explains, was never the destination. It was a guide pointing forward, like training wheels, useful for a time but not permanent. And then he writes something radical for his time. There is neither Jew nor Greek, slave nor free, male nor female, for you are all one in Christ. In a divided world, Paul declares a new identity, one not based on status, but on grace. Section 2, Thessalonians. Hope, Indiana, uncertainty. From Galatia, the story moves to Thessalonica, a young church, barely established. Paul was forced to leave quickly, and now these new believers are on their own, and fear begins to grow. Some members of their community have died, and they believe those people have missed Christ's return. Paul writes back, not with theory but comfort, the dead in Christ will rise first. Their loss is not permanent. Their hope is not empty. But soon, a new problem emerges. Some take this hope too far. They stop working. They stop contributing, waiting, instead of living. And Paul corrects them clearly. If anyone will not work, neither shall he eat. Faith does not remove responsibility. Hope is not an excuse to withdraw from life. It is a reason to engage with it more deeply. Section 3, Corinth. Chaos and correction. Then comes Corinth, a wealthy, influential, and morally unstable city. And the church reflects its environment. Division, bride, conflict. People align themselves with leaders instead of truth. I follow Paul. I follow Apollos. The community fractures, and the problems deepen. Lawsuits among believers. Moral failure ignored. Sacred practices turned into social events. Every chapter of Paul's letter addresses a new issue. But in the middle of correction, he pauses and writes one of the most recognized passages in history. If I have all knowledge, all faith, all sacrifice, but have not love, I am nothing. This is not poetry. It is correction, because without love, everything else becomes noise. Then Paul addresses something even more foundational, the resurrection. If Christ is not risen, faith collapses. But if he is, then everything changes. The resurrection is not an addition to belief. It is the foundation. Clapperboard section 4, 2 Corinthians. Strength in weakness. By the time Paul writes again, something has shifted. He has been hurt, criticized, questioned, undermined. Instead of defending himself with power, he reveals something unexpected, his weakness. He lists not achievements, but suffering. And then he shares something deeply personal, a thorn in the flesh, something painful, persistent, unresolved. He prayed for it to be removed, but the answer he received was, "My grace is sufficient for you." Not relief, but strength. And in that moment, Paul understands, power is not always seen in control, but in endurance. Clapperboard section 5, Romans, the complete message. Then comes Romans, Paul's most structured and complete explanation. He begins with a universal truth. All have sinned. No exceptions. Then comes the solution, justified freely by grace, not earned, given. He moves from guilt to peace to transformation, and then speaks to a struggle many recognize, knowing what is right, but failing to do it. And then the turning point. There is now no condemnation for those in Christ. Not reduced condemnation. None. And he ends with one of the strongest declarations ever written. Nothing can separate you from the love of God. Not failure. Not fear. Not even time itself. Clapperboard Section 6. Prison Letters. Purpose in chains. Paul arrives in Rome, but not freely, in chains. Yet from that limitation comes clarity. In Ephesians, he speaks of identity and purpose. In Philippians, he speaks of joy while imprisoned. In Colossians, he declares the supremacy of Christ. And in Philemon, he turns a social system upside down. A runaway slave is now a brother. Even in chains, his message expands. Clapperboard Section 7. Final letter. Ending faithfully. The final letter is different. It is quieter, more personal, more final. Paul is no longer in a house, but in a cold prison. Many have left. Only a few remain. And yet, his focus is unchanged. Preach the word. Stay ready. Do not stop. And then his closing words. I have fought the good fight. I have finished the race. I have kept the faith. Not perfection. Faithfulness. He does not ask for recognition. Only simple things. A coat. And his books. Even at the end, he wants to keep learning. Clapperboard Final Conclusion. 13 letters. Written across years of movement, conflict, growth, and suffering. Together, they tell a single story. Grace meets people where they are. Suffering is not absence of purpose. And faithfulness matters more than perfection. Clapperboard Final line. You don't have to finish perfectly. You just have to finish faithful.